In a day that began like any other, Police Chief Andrea Mitchell, a respected leader in law enforcement, faced an unsettling turn of events that exposed the darker side of policing. What should have been a routine traffic stop instead became a distressing encounter marked by unexpected hostility and deep-seated racial bias. As Chief Mitchell, a figure known for her dedication and professionalism, was pulled over by her own colleagues, she anticipated a straightforward interaction. Instead, she was met with suspicion and disrespect that not only undermined her authority but also revealed a troubling systemic issue within the force. Despite her calm and composed efforts to de-escalate the situation, the officer's resistance and antagonism only deepened the conflict. Their actions, reflecting a profound disregard for her position and an unsettling racial prejudice, turned what should have been a routine stop into a national scandal. This distressing incident quickly garnered media attention, sparking widespread outrage and igniting a crucial conversation about racial bias and the need for reform within law enforcement. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. In a deeply troubling incident that highlights a serious and pervasive racial bias within law enforcement, a highly esteemed black female police chief was subjected to a deeply unjust and egregious traffic stop by her colleagues. This event, which should have been a routine and professionally executed traffic stop, took a disturbing turn, revealing not only a glaring deficiency in awareness and sensitivity, but also exposing fundamental and systemic issues embedded within the policing system itself. The circumstances of this encounter were deeply unsettling, casting a harsh and glaring spotlight on the entrenched prejudices that continue to plague even those entrusted with the responsibility of upholding justice. While the traffic stop ostensibly followed standard procedures, it ultimately exposed a more troubling reality about the ingrained biases that persistently undermine the integrity of law enforcement practices. On a day that began with the promise of routine and normalcy, Police Chief Andrea Mitchell, a figure widely recognized and respected for her unwavering commitment to justice and her exemplary record within law enforcement, was heading home after a particularly demanding day at work. As she drove through a neighborhood she had navigated countless times before, a patrol car unexpectedly activated its lights and signaled for her to pull over. Initially, there was no indication that this stop would diverge from the ordinary course of events. Chief Mitchell, well versed in the routines and protocols of law enforcement, complied without hesitation, expecting the interaction to proceed with the professionalism and respect that she had come to anticipate in her many years of service. However, what transpired was anything but routine. As the patrol car came to a stop behind her vehicle, the officers who emerged from the car approached the situation with an unsettling air of suspicion, rather than the customary demeanor of professionalism and courtesy. Their attitude was noticeably tense and unwelcoming, a stark contrast to the expected conduct in such interactions. This lack of the usual respect and professionalism was further exacerbated by the officers' apparent ignorance of Chief Mitchell's prestigious and esteemed position within the law enforcement hierarchy. The situation unfolded with a series of unsettling and disheartening details, each contributing to a growing sense of disbelief and concern. The officer's conduct revealed a profound insensitivity and a troubling disregard for the chief's status, highlighting a broader and more systemic issue of racial bias within the policing system. This incident not only brought to light the personal indignity experienced by Chief Mitchell, but also underscored a more extensive problem within the law enforcement community, one that continues to challenge the integrity and efficacy of policing practices. When Chief Mitchell introduced herself and displayed her badge, she anticipated a swift and respectful resolution to the stop. Her expectation was grounded in the assumption that her role as a high-ranking officer would be immediately recognized, leading to a smooth and courteous interaction. However, the response she encountered from the other officers was a painful shock. Instead of offering respect and acknowledgement due to someone in her position, they greeted her with an alarming dismissiveness. Their questions, laced with a troubling accusatory tone, not only disregarded her authority but seemed intent on undermining her legitimacy. It was as though her badge, which symbolized years of dedicated service and commitment, was treated with contempt. This disheartening response was more than a mere lapse in professionalism. It was a blatant act of disrespect that cut deeply into the core of her identity and role. The situation, which should have been a straightforward, professional encounter, rapidly spiraled into an episode marked by undue hostility and aggression. The officers' questions, initially routine, turned increasingly invasive, and their demeanor grew ever more confrontational. The atmosphere was charged with a palpable tension, an unsettling reflection of a deeper, systemic problem within the law enforcement environment. Chief Mitchell's genuine attempt to engage with the officers in a manner befitting her position was met with an aggressive challenge, transforming what could have been a routine interaction into a painful confrontation. The refusal to recognize her identity and authority intensified the conflict, exposing not just a personal affront, but a broader issue of respect and integrity within the policing community. This distressing incident was far from a one-off anomaly. It starkly revealed the pervasive and systemic biases that stain law enforcement practices. The contrast between the professional conduct one would expect and the hostile, disrespectful treatment she received underscored a troubling disconnect within the system. The incident served as a painful reminder of the flaws and inequalities that continue to undermine the very essence of fair and just policing. The emotional impact of this experience went beyond personal humiliation, highlighting urgent and deep-seated issues that demand a fundamental reassessment of how respect, authority, and professionalism are handled within law enforcement. Amidst the mounting tension and escalating discord, Chief Mitchell dedicated herself to preserving her composure and maintaining a professional demeanor, despite the increasingly volatile nature of the situation. Her approach was both calm and methodical, as she strove to de-escalate the conflict that had taken a disturbing turn. With deliberate intent, she made every effort to diffuse the escalating hostility and restore a semblance of order. Drawing upon her extensive experience and rigorous training, Chief Mitchell engaged with the officers in a series of measured interactions, seeking to address their concerns and clarify her stance on the matter. Her responses were carefully considered, aiming to provide clear explanations and address the issues at hand. However, despite her well-reasoned arguments and earnest attempts to communicate, it became evident that her efforts were not being met with the understanding or cooperation she had hoped for. The officers, instead of showing any signs of receptivity, appeared increasingly obstinate and antagonistic. Their reluctance to acknowledge her authority or even recognize her presence only seemed to amplify the already tense situation. Chief Mitchell's well-intentioned efforts to reason with them were met with a steadfast and aggressive stance. They challenged her credentials and undermined her attempts at mediation, further exacerbating the conflict. Their demeanor grew increasingly confrontational, and their responses became progressively dismissive. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. In her attempt to engage them in what she hoped would be a constructive dialogue, Chief Mitchell found that her words seemed to only inflame their hostility further. She endeavored to articulate her role and the established protocols she was adhering to, but the officers' reactions indicated that their resistance was rooted in issues beyond mere procedural disagreements. Their behavior revealed a deeply unsettling and pervasive bias that seemed to overshadow any rational discourse. It became increasingly clear that their refusal to accept her authority and identity was not merely a matter of procedural conflict, but was deeply entwined with a troubling undercurrent of racial prejudice that tainted the entire exchange. This situation unfolded not merely as a clash of differing viewpoints, but as a stark and deeply troubling display of entrenched discrimination that significantly marred the interactions and obstructed any meaningful efforts toward resolution. Chief Mitchell's attempts to navigate and mediate the situation with a sense of diplomacy and integrity were increasingly undermined by the prejudiced attitudes of certain officers, whose biases only served to deepen the conflict and highlight the profound systemic issues that plagued the institution. The incident rapidly morphed into a national media sensation, captivating audiences across the country and igniting widespread public outrage. The treatment of Chief Mitchell, a figure of considerable respect and authority within the police force, became the focal point of intense and relentless scrutiny and debate. The gravity of the situation, combined with its shocking details, drew significant attention and prompted a broader national conversation about the pervasive and insidious issues of racial profiling and bias within law enforcement. The public reaction was both swift and vigorous, reflecting deep-seated anxieties and concerns about the fairness, transparency, and integrity of policing practices. The ordeal faced by Chief Mitchell was not an isolated event, but rather a glaring illustration of the systemic problems that have long plagued the police force. The high-profile nature of the case, along with the involvement of such a prominent and respected figure as Chief Mitchell, brought these issues to the forefront of public consciousness, making it impossible for anyone to ignore the urgent need for substantial reform. The media's coverage of the incident further amplified the discourse, exposing the extent of the problems and fueling a broader call for change. The intensity of the public response underscored the necessity for addressing the deep-rooted biases and structural flaws within law enforcement agencies. This case, with its shocking revelations and profound implications, catalyzed a larger movement advocating for justice, accountability, and systemic reform. The urgency of the situation highlighted the critical need for comprehensive changes to address the underlying issues and restore trust in policing practices. The incident brought to the forefront glaring inadequacies in the current training and oversight of police officers, revealing a significant gap in effectively addressing racial biases and ensuring equitable treatment for all individuals. It became increasingly evident that the existing protocols and measures were insufficient to prevent or adequately respond to such abuses of power, sparking a widespread and urgent call for comprehensive changes within the law enforcement system. In the wake of the incident, there was a substantial outpouring of support for the implementation of more rigorous and expansive training programs designed to enhance officers' awareness and sensitivity. Public figures, activists, and community leaders collectively rallied to advocate for a thorough re-evaluation of police practices and policies to confront and correct systemic biases. This collective advocacy played a crucial role in catalyzing a national dialogue, urging reforms that not only addressed the immediate issues highlighted by the case, but also laid the groundwork for meaningful, long-term improvements in policing practices. The incident underscored the critical need for reform and emphasized the imperative of ensuring that all individuals are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race or background. The widespread outrage and demands for change highlighted the necessity of adopting a transformative approach to law enforcement, one that prioritizes fairness, accountability, and a steadfast commitment to eradicating racial prejudice within the ranks of the police force. The case became a pivotal moment in the broader discourse on criminal justice reform, serving as a stark reminder of the deep-rooted issues that must be addressed to restore trust and integrity in policing. The fervent public response and the resulting push for change underscored the urgency of implementing reforms that would ensure more equitable and just treatment for every individual, reinforcing the foundational principles of equality and justice within the law enforcement system. Chief Mitchell's experience ignited an extensive and profound conversation about racial bias within law enforcement, unveiling the complex and often harsh realities faced by Black individuals in positions of authority. This high-profile case not only brought to light the systemic challenges and disparities that persist within policing, but also highlighted the unique obstacles encountered by those from marginalized backgrounds who strive to lead and effect meaningful change from within the system. Her experience underscored the urgent need for substantial reforms, including more rigorous training programs and enhanced accountability mechanisms within police departments, to confront and address the deeply entrenched issues of racial bias that continue to undermine the effectiveness and fairness of law enforcement. The incident stood as a powerful testament to Chief Mitchell's extraordinary resilience and unwavering commitment to the principles of justice and equality. Her approach to managing the crisis with professionalism and integrity reflected her profound dedication to navigating and overcoming the barriers of racial discrimination. Chief Mitchell's ability to handle the situation with grace and fortitude demonstrated her steadfast resolve to confront the biases and injustices that had been brought to the forefront. Furthermore, her subsequent efforts to advocate for systemic reform emphasized her relentless determination to address the broader and more intricate issues of racial inequality within policing. Chief Mitchell's push for reform was not merely a reaction to her own experiences, but a strategic and heartfelt endeavor aimed at creating lasting change. Through her courageous stance and leadership, she emerged as a pivotal figure in the movement for reform, symbolizing the potential for transformative progress within law enforcement and inspiring a broader examination of the practices and policies that govern the field. Her advocacy has ignited a critical dialogue, pushing for a more equitable and just policing system that upholds the values of fairness, accountability, and integrity. Chief Mitchell's actions and dedication have not only highlighted the need for reform, but have also galvanized a national conversation about how to address and rectify the systemic biases that have long plagued law enforcement. Her leadership has become a beacon of hope and a catalyst for change, driving the call for a policing system that genuinely serves and protects all communities with equity and respect. In conclusion, the unjust detainment of Police Chief Andrea Mitchell by her colleagues exposed the deep-seated racial bias that continues to plague law enforcement, bringing to the forefront the systemic issues that persist within the field. Her composed and professional handling of this distressing situation, combined with her proactive advocacy for change, highlighted the ongoing struggle against racial injustice and the pressing need for comprehensive reform in policing practices. Chief Mitchell's response showcased her to justice and equity, but also as a potent catalyst for wider discussions about the need for fundamental structural changes within law enforcement. Her experience has underscored the critical importance of confronting these issues directly and advocating for reforms that foster fairness, accountability, and inclusivity within the policing system. Through her leadership and unwavering commitment, Chief Mitchell has reinforced the necessity of addressing systemic biases and working towards a more equitable and just law enforcement framework. Her actions have galvanized a broader dialogue on reform, driving the call for a policing system that upholds the principles of fairness and respect for all individuals. Thank you for watching and diving into this powerful story about the wrongful stop of Police Chief Andrea Mitchell. This incident not only revealed deep-seated issues of racial bias within law enforcement, but also showcased how one person's response can ignite a call for change. We'd love to hear from you. What have you learned from this story? And how do you plan to apply that knowledge in your own life? Share your thoughts and insights in the comments below. If you found this video impactful, please leave your comment. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more important discussions and stories. Your support helps us continue to bring you meaningful content.